Today I'm going to talk to you about finding common ground within conflict. Today we've heard about how conflict can be very valuable and beneficial, but only if a solution can be reached. In order for relationships to reach their full potential, a common ground must be agreed upon with an end goal in mind. So first, let's take a look at a few situations where you can use various techniques to establish common ground. The first is the process of selection, where you suppress one need in favor of focusing on another need. So if I'm a keynote speaker who's scheduled to talk to a group of students, and the dean of the school wants me to talk for 20 minutes, but I really want to talk for 45. At the end of the day, when I step behind that podium, I'm going to put my differences aside and, for the sake of the students, focus on getting what I have to say under 20 minutes. The next technique we can look at is separation, which is meeting both parties' needs separately. If a guy gets engaged to his girlfriend, he's not going to be able to hang out with his friends 3-4 nights a week. But if he talks to his fiancée and explains his situation to his friends, he can still probably be able to play pool every Saturday night, like they have been doing for years. The next technique is called neutralization, which is where a compromise is reached and both parties agree to meet in the middle. If a boyfriend and a girlfriend go to the movies and he wants to see a horror movie and she wants to see a romance, the two can meet in the middle and agree to just go see James Bond instead. Next is the technique referred to as reframing, which is restructuring the source of conflict in order to create a new solution. So if a family goes to Disney World every single summer, but one summer they're not able to because the hotels are all booked and it's absolutely crazy over there. Instead of going to Disney World, they can just go to the coast, find a nice place, buy a beach, and just kick it. Pina colada in your hand, it's great, it's wonderful, you really should give it a shot. Now that we've talked about situations, we're going to look at some ways you communicate in order to reach common ground. And first, let's take a look at the process that we go through with people who are different. And it's called value differentiation. The first stage is resistance, is where we see people who are different than us as weaker or inferior. And a lot of times this can result in condescending remarks or tone, which a lot of times can actually lead to and inspire conflict. The next stage is tolerance, where we're okay with people who are different, but we segregate ourselves. We do not allow ourselves to trust them or accept the fact that them being different is okay. And we do this out of desire solely to not cause conflict. The next stage is respect, and this is where we begin to acknowledge people who are different than us for being different. But we're still not totally sure. We have a limited spectrum of trust, but we're willing to learn about new things. And finally, it's participation. This is when we're finally willing to take risks, make mistakes, get messy, and trust people who are different than us as being valuable assets to what they can bring to our lives. Somebody who's completely different than you can be the jigsaw puzzle piece that you've been looking for. And in light of all of this, you have to remember to communicate resourcefully, which is essentially finding common ground without compromising. So if I'm talking to somebody who is a staunch believer in Darwinism, I can tell him that I don't believe in Darwinism. I believe in creationism because I'm a Christian. But I do acknowledge that I think that natural selection can take place within the framework of a benevolent creator. I can respectfully disagree while being resourceful enough to present my argument while not trampling on his opinion. Next, we want to communicate respectfully. And a lot of times this refers to social and cultural differences that you might run into. I have a lot of Jewish friends. I have a couple of Seventh-day Adventist friends. And they don't like to eat pork. They don't believe in it. It's their religion. I personally love bacon. But I'm not going to tell them that they're stupid for not liking bacon. Being respectful of people and what they believe in is essential for finding common ground. And a few more tips on how to find common ground. First, use tact. Have some timing. If your wife's having a really bad day, probably shouldn't ask her, to do the dishes. Next, have respect for that people are growing, they're learning. If somebody did something a week ago that ticked you off, don't bring it up today. Next, look at the positives. Don't always be the first person to point out the negatives in somebody. Build them up and give them constructive criticism. This would make you more credible and allow you to build common ground with that person. But at the end of the day, establishing common ground, it's not simple. It's not easy, but it's very possible. Relationships can be nurtured, situations can be salvaged, and people are given the opportunity to grow. Solving conflicts can apply to any industry or social situation that you may find yourself in. The only question is, how are you going to do it? Thank you.